In the last video, we saw that while sometimes they can be used in unusual ways, most instruments and groups of instruments in orchestras have a certain role that they perform. For example, the cellos and basses often play the bass line, giving the harmony, direction, and foundation. Equally, the percussion section keeps the rhythm ticking over and allows composers to add and emphasize the beat whenever they want. As we look towards jazz, rock, and pop ensembles, we'll find that actually exactly the same is true. There are players in these ensembles too, whose job it is to take care of these important musical elements. Let's have a look at the traditional garage rock band and see what kinds of roles these instruments perform. While there are some instrumental groups that play rock and pop music, most of the time we expect a band to have a singer. Almost always, this singer is the focus of the group. We all know that Freddie Mercury was the singer and frontman of the band Queen. But can you name the band's bass player or drummer, for example? Using a vocalist or a frontman in this way goes right the way back to some of the earliest blues bands. Even though 100 years has passed since then, it's surprising how similar the topics of these lyrics that vocalists sing tend to be. As well as giving their songs meaning through lyrics, the melodies that vocalists sing tend to be the most important in rock and pop music. Another important melody instrument that we tend to find in rock, pop and jazz ensembles is the lead guitar. A lead guitarist might play melodies that support and interject with the singer, almost like a conversation. The singer might sing a line, and the guitarist will play something back. This is called call and response, and it's very common in blues, rock and pop music. Some bands have a second guitarist, called a rhythm guitarist. It's the job of this player to fill out the rest of the music with chords, and thus provide harmony. There are a huge number of chords that can be played on the guitar. But in lots of rock and pop music, most players tend to focus on the primary triads, the most simple chords that we can play. Bass guitarists and double bass players in bands are often responsible for the bass line. The bass line is like the foundation of the music, which everything else is built on. In most bands, the bass player will follow the chords being performed by the rhythm guitarist, or the pianist if the band has one. They will generally choose to play the lowest note of each chord, so if the guitarist is playing an E major triad, the bass player is likely to play a riff that focuses on the note E. It's also not uncommon for the bass player to play in octaves with the guitarist. This can be a really powerful driving effect, and it's used in a lot of rock music. Finally, just like the orchestra, most rock, pop and jazz bands has its own mini percussion section in the form of a drum kit player. Bringing together the various different sounds of the bass drum, the snare, the hi-hat, the toms and other cymbals, the drum kit player is able to produce complex rhythmic patterns to drive the music forward. This is particularly important in jazz. You might have heard the famous expression which comes from a piece of music by Duke Ellington: "It don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing." Swing is a particular rhythmic pattern that drummers use in a lot of jazz music. It gives the music its distinct groove and sounds something like this. So let's now go and have a look at some videos of some rock, pop and jazz bands and see all of these instruments in action.